Thank you for joining us again on what is the second part of our series entitled Cleaning Up Your Headspace. Now, you can have a PDF of this series, which is entitled Molly, Gurl, You Being Gaslighted. You can find it at freshlivingstreet.com. You can go to the reading resource page and you'll see where you can download for free the PDFs for this series. Our first in this series was Who the is Talking in My Head. That was the first series. And each one of these are kind of a reading journal that you can answer questions, and you can put your thoughts down in these journals. Now, as I said, the first journal was Who the is Talking in My Head. And the second in the series is Molly, Gurl, You're Being Gaslighted. And so you can download the PDFs for this series if you go to freshlivingstreet.com and you go to the media resource page. And also just check out the website. There are a lot of self-help videos to help you, and reading material to help you find you in the journey, because I feel that if you're watching this, it's because you know that there's more to life and you just need some answers. Now, let's talk about the integration process, the establishment of suffering and of pleasure. I entitled this Get the Prize or Suffer the Consequence. The integration process is established on the principle of divide and conquer. The independent will of the newbie, which is I'm referring to as you, the newbie, to the earth plane must be subdued and trained. As with any kind of indoctrination, the system of punishment and reward is established. Pleasure, if the subject does what it is told to do. Pain, if the subject resists instructions. Now, I think we've all kind of seen this on movies where, somebody wants information and they say, if you don't give us information, we're going to poke you out, or we're going to cut your thumb off. It's simply the thing of pain or pleasure. Can you write about can you think about a child experience of being disciplined? Why were you being disciplined, and what type of discipline was being used, and who was the one who administered the discipline? I think the use of pain is one of the most effective instruments when you are being indoctrinated by society. I'll never forget, even as myself, now, since I was reared during the 60s, you had corporal punishments in the school, and it was no big deal. The parents trusted that the principals would not kill you, or the teachers would not kill you, so teachers disciplined you. I remember paddles. I remember sticks that were wrapped in tape. These were different instruments that were used on us to instill discipline. And I remember one certain incident that happened with me, and I was in the first grade. My mother had sent me to school, and I had a cold, and it was a very bad cold with the mucus and the coughing and just all the things that, the miserableness of a cold for a child. And I remember sitting in music class, and we were sitting in chairs. Remember, I'm in the first grade. And the teacher, she was teaching, and I sneeze, and of course that sneeze brought out mucus out of my nose, and it brought out the phlegm that was in my throat, and it landed on the chair, on the floor. I can't remember which one, but the teacher, it upset her. I don't know if she was having a bad day or what the deal was, but she chose to whack me 3 times with a stick that she had wrapped with tape, and I was very confused and upset. So I went home and I told my mother. Now, on the way home, I had a best friend, so we were talking about the incident, and I told him, I said, well, when I get on, my mother, she's gonna come home and she's gonna come up to that school and box Miss Woman's ear. And so he took it upon himself when we got to school the next day to go and tell the teacher what I had said, which made its way to the principal and also to the teacher who had disciplined me. Now, the next day at school, I know my mother's coming up to the school, and during the evening, she had said what she was going to do, what she was going to say, because she didn't like the idea of this um, teacher whom she had had the same experience, because I had 6 brothers and sisters who had gone through the same teacher, and they were all pretty much just had experiences with her, and she was going to go and tell blah blah blah. And when we got to the school, I'm sitting in the office expecting for my mother to to man up for me and to defend me. But when we got to school, it was a totally different thing, and I was totally disappeared. But that instilled in me a value that you can't trust people. Because if I couldn't trust my own mother and she had switched sides on me in front of my very eyes, then that kind of began to be the process of me saying, well, you got to protect yourself. Now, think about an experience you had of being disciplined, and as I said, why you were being disciplined, and what type of discipline was it that you got, and who was the person who was administering the discipline, and what was the feeling that was left after the experience. Now, also think about this. Think about a time when you were being rewarded for doing something. What was the activity that you did to receive the praise or attention? Who was the person that took notice of your deed? What did you receive as a reward, and how did you feel in that moment? And I think most of us have had the good feeling of being pat on the back, or being rewarded for something. I can only talk about myself. I remember after having a hard time in the 6th grade, which I just passed because I had a teacher who had mercy. Um, just as background, during the 60s, integration happened, and we were able to move out of um, our old neighborhood, which was mostly black, and which was, lower class or lower income, and we were able to break that barrier, and we were able to move to the suburbs of the city we lived in. And of course, when I got to the school, which was totally white, and I think there were only about 4 blacks in the whole school, or maybe 1,000 children. But my education in the black school was totally different from the education that they were, or the culture that was instilled in their learning institute, and I did not do well. But the teacher, she was merciful, and she just passed me with D's. But I had decided that summer that when I would be transferred to the junior high school, that I would never be embarrassed again by not knowing another value that was instilled in me. And I decided I was going to be smart, I was going to read, and I took that, and I still pretty much have that value to up to today. But one of the rewards for that, in the 7th, 8th grade, I was invited to be a member of the honor society. That meant that you were one of the smart kids in the school. And I remember the big installation service and the candle lighting and the grandness of it, to say that you were superior when it came down to being smart or being educated. And I remember how it made me feel to say, well, I'm going to excel even more. And then you just go on to take AP classes in high school, college, and all the different things. Now, think about it. When you, what experience did you have? And as I said, and what was the experience, and who were the people that were involved, and what did you receive as a reward, and how did it make you feel in that moment? The system of punishment and rewards supplants one's critical behavior to the newbie's pure and loving spirit. It implants fear. Fear is an unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that someone or something is dangerous, likely to cause pain, or are a threat. Fear brings with it two seeds that grow in the mind. Remember the ego of the newbie. Because you have to remember the ego is now trying to take control of this earth suit as opposed to you who are authentic, who sits on the seat of awareness and of consciousness. The first seed is the fear of not being good enough. This punishment factor enforces three lessons to the newbie. The first lesson of the first seed is that you're not in control. Remember, you, the newbie, are very small and you have no means of taking care of yourself. The idea of independence will not be born into you until you reach puberty. And you're not that, and you won't get there until years later. Remember, it's using your innocence against you. The second lesson that this first seed gives you is you did not obey. You are a bad boy. You are a bad girl. You have failed in pleasing us or others. And pain will always, the last lesson of the three lessons that the first seed of fear teach us is pain will always be your reward for going against the system that is being transferred to you. And there is a possibility that it will be more painful the next time. And as a remedy to this seed that's being planted by fear, the newbie, which is you, resides to be a good little boy or girl. The newbie learns to become a people pleaser. The newbie wants to be rewarded for being good all the time. The newbie becomes a carbon copy of his parents, society, and religious value. The newbie takes these values internally as his or her own values now. As a result, the newbie's sense of self, which is your self-esteem, is built on the foundation of being acceptable to society. The newbie desires to be perfect by following these rules and values learned during the integration process. Working toward the illusion of perfection is often based in shame and feelings of unworthiness and incompleteness. You see this with people who base their success on material wealth, expensive possessions, symbols of status, symbols of intelligence, such as educational degrees. They think their perfect and happy life will manifest when they gain certain external accomplishments. This leads to the next seed being supplanted in the mind or the ego of the newbie. And the second seed is self-judgment. When the newbie strives toward perfection, the tendency is to judge himself harshly. The newbie makes sacrifices that can cause him or her their sense of inner peace, health, and often lose attentiveness to the real needs of the one who sits on the seat of awareness. The newbie lives from a shame-based place that centers around you should do this, and you should not do this, in order to achieve his idea of perfection. Striving for perfection pushes the newbie towards a tendency of being rigid and the fear of making mistakes, or the fear of mistakes being found out. This process of perfection can lead the newbie to judging other people and himself using a strict value system as his gold standard. Now that you are becoming aware, can you think of some values that you have learned and believed that may not be serving you anymore? This is a part of the waking up process that a lot of us are going through at this time. Let's talk about judgment. Sammy Davis Jr. dressed up as a judge doing a skit on Rowan and Martin Laughing Show, and this was a show from the 1970s. Uh, the premise of this skit was that no one was empty. No one was ever innocent, and they would receive a clunk on the head from the judge. But the words were, to open it up, he says, "You can testify, but you just can't win, because I'm here to tell you you guilty of sin. Here comes the judge. Here comes the judge. Everybody watch out. Here comes the judge." And I'm quite sure those of us who are fossils remember that. Now, this scene is played out many times during the day for those who are not aware that they are in a sleep state. According to the author Miguel Ruiz in the self-help book, The Four Agreements, A Practical Guide to Personal Freedom, he fashions the self to three separate individuals: the book of laws, which is a value system, the judge, and the victim. The book of laws, or the value system, accuses you, the self, of messing up. These are little rules that you made up, and you have broken one of those rules. You made a mistake. You transgressed this information that was transferred to you from the outside world or society. Now that you are guilty, you must go to the judge. The judge is a superego. This is the one who's being reinforced that you just don't do certain things because you're a good person. You're perfect. People don't do that. So now the judge, or the superego, declares you, the victim, that you're guilty for not being perfect as according to what's been imported to you as your value system. Now the victim, which is ego, carries the blame. It carries the shame, the guilt. It is a part of you that says you're not good enough or worthy, or you're a bad man, or you're a bad woman, or you're not smart enough, you're not attractive enough, you're too old, you're too young. Now, because this was done earlier when you were a newbie, you no longer need punishment from outsiders or the outside world. You have learned how to self-punish or self-discipline in your headspace, which affects your body, your emotion, and your thoughts. This scene has played out many times, I think, in most of our heads. Think about the different voices that are in play. Think about what transgressions that you made, and you think about what was the punishment. Now, this not only happens in your internal world, but also your outside world of relationship with parents, marital partners, friends, those, and including even those who may not have your best interests at heart. Sometimes those around us are suffering from the same judgment seen in their heads. When a person cannot forgive themselves for mistakes, they're just as hard on others who make mistakes. Think about an instance in your own life where you refuse to let someone else off the hook because you didn't let you off the hook. And this starts with what I think is the blame game. I've been in work situations, and I have bosses who this is when, younger, after I got out of college, and you're working in certain environments, especially in school environments where there's plenty of blame to go around because there's always something that happens. But the blame game begins. Something happens in the classroom, or a certain criteria was not met, and the superintendent of the school district gets on the supervisors, and it just goes down and down, where you just have everyone playing the blame game. And if you are under a principal who had identity problems, or who had a low self-esteem, nothing was ever his fault, so it became your fault. And this is the same way that work with people who are hard on themselves about judgment. Okay, I got to get the blame off of me, so I'm going to blame you. You made me do it. You made me do it. Think about where this may have happened in your own life, where you did something, but you blamed. If they hadn't done it, then I would have not have done that. How long did you hold that mistake over their head before releasing it? What was the mistake that happened for you to blame them and for them to become your scapegoat? Now think about this. A mistake was made by you in the past with a loved one or friend. Um, you were in a relationship and maybe you cheated or you did something to violate and it was found out, but you remained together. But when the relationships get heated, your mistakes are brought up again. How do you feel about that? Or what do you think about the person who is not able to move on after you have apologized and made amends? And then the last question, how will you proceed in this? Psychologists use the term gaslighting to refer to a specific type of manipulation where the manipulator is trying to get someone else or a group of people to question their own reality, their own memories, their own perceptions. And it's always a serious problem, according to psychologists. Now you can see that this life you're living may not be your life, but an image of a life that is not real. Now that you can see that this life you're living may not be your life, but an image of a life that is not real, there are observations or thoughts that signify that you're in the awakening process. You no longer feel like the person you used to be. You look the same, but there's just something different about what you see and how you perceive what you're seeing. You feel as if those around you are not growing and they are talking about the same thing, and there's a desire in you to move on to the next level. Or maybe like some of us, I know I experience this, you're talking to your friends, they have no earthly idea what it is you're talking about. The conversation goes from just loud and exuberant to when you start talking, everybody just gets quiet and they look at you like deer in headlights. That's because you're changing. They're staying the same, but you're changing. You're beginning to speak a new language. You're beginning to talk a new talk. You're beginning to see things in a different light. You find yourself being more anxious and less confident than you used to be about the direction your life is heading. You're often wondering if you're being too sensitive about what is being said about you or the way that people see you. For your whole life, you've been looked on as the one who's the go-getter, the one who knew how to do everything, and now you're looking at it as the fact of, okay, these people are codependent and it's not working out the best for them being codependent. And also you're thinking when, things went wrong, you just kind of took the blame and you apologized to just keep peace. Well, that's not working for you now as a panacea, because now you're seeing that it's violating your sense of peace, being the peacemaker. You are having a sense that something's wrong with your values, but you're not able at this point to understand what it is. And that's why we're doing this series, to help you understand what's going on. You're often questioning whether your response to people in life is beneficial toward your own happiness and peace. You are isolating from friends voluntarily and family to seek information about a new direction, a spiritual path, and taking little or no pleasure in activities that you used to enjoy because they no longer serve you. Most of the values and your core value systems are lies. Your core values are not something that you chose for yourself. You didn't choose to speak the language that you speak. You didn't choose the religious belief that you were reared in. You didn't even choose your name. Rather, these values are feelings and beliefs that operate in the background of your mind and influences your behavior. You discovered what your values are through life experiences during the process of building self-awareness. Remember, this was all done when you couldn't protect yourself, when you didn't know. And so most of these things were instilled in you when you were still in the vulnerable stage. As I said, dirty pool. Your personal core values are what encompass your foundational beliefs, which then dictates your behavior and guides you to make decisions that you do. Your values are broad concepts that can be reapplied many times over again in your life in various situations to guide your action. Now, these are some of the core values that you have. And they're not in any specific order because they're in different order for different people. But you have family, you have tradition, creativity, trusting relationships, communication, service, achievement, faith, competition, health, self-confidence, growth, structure, inner peace, decision-making, and self-awareness. These are just a few of the hundreds of core values, and they come in different places for everyone. Some of us, our faith is the most important thing. Some of us, our family is the most important thing. Some of us, our money is the most important thing. Your value system is how it was set up when you were being indoctrinated. Each of the values listed before have categories or rules attached to them. Let's take the family values. Now, the family values has many sub categories attached to it. So you're not just not dealing with the 100 or so values, but each one of them have hundreds of values that are attached to that specific value. Let's take the family value. Okay, family value. It entails, first of all, how you will treat your wife. She comes under the wife appendix. So one of the values, what will she look like? Will she be blonde-eyed? Will she be brown-haired? Will she be blonde? Will she be brunette? Will she be black? Will she be white? Will she be tall? Will she be thin? Will she be fat? That's one of the first things. What type of education will she be expected to have? Will she be just a high school graduate? Will she be a college graduate? And what kind of college graduate? Bachelor's, master's, doctorate? Will she be a housewife or will she be a career woman? What kind of economic background will she need to come from? Will she need to come from a poor family or a family that was on equal standing with you? As you can see, this list just goes on, and it becomes very complicated. And this is just dealing with the wife. We hadn't even started dealing with how many children, and whether they be boys or they be girls, or the in-laws or the outlaws. All of the different things that come along with family. Will you live in the suburbs? Will you live in the city? Will you live in the country? All of these different values come under just that one topic of family. Now, you have to add to each one of these values or sub-values, you have to add a voice to represent that value. Now, imagine each of these sub-values trying to talk to you at the same time. And think of you trying to obey each one of these values and listen to them. And you know the consequence if you break one of the values is that you're going to be pulled in front of the judge. Now, you yourself, think about your list of values and try to put them in order. Just try to do 10 and put them in order. What's that you have been taught is most important to you. And so you can see on the outside what is going on the inside as you begin to recreate who you are in order to become more aware of the one that sits on the seat of judgment that is just watching this show. Now that you have made the list of some of the expectations that you're supposed to fulfill each day for the rest of your life in this earth suit, you probably suspect that you've been bamboozled by the outside world, the society, and the naivete of your sleeping soul of awareness. You realize there is no way to have a peaceful and happy life with all of the unrealistic rules in your value system. There's no way to have a peaceful and happy life with the unattainable expectations of society and the inner mind. In our next series, which is entitled Hush Your Fuss, we will discuss how to bring order to your inner world. As I always say, we're here to learn and to understand. And I'm hoping that you will download the next series, Hush Your Fuss, off of our website, which is FreshLivingStreet.com under the resource media page, and also just explore the website. And don't forget to like and subscribe to us on our Facebook channel, Fresh Living Street. You will be glad that you did. And as I always say, we're here to learn and to understand. Be well.